listening to Republic Broadcasting Network. Because you can handle the truth.
Wake up, you sip hot tea. Mindless music, radio free. You see blue skies and think of sea. How are you doing? Later on, switch on TV. They give me the news, they give half truths to me. They give us wise, they feed us lies. Now how are we doing? Educated, they fabricate. And we sit back till it's too
The Radio Adventure. Rick Adams is on.
Hello, everyone. We're back tonight, Wednesday night, and we're grateful to be here. And first thing, order of business on the program is to look at the New Covenant in the Scriptures. You know, it's interesting how the New Covenant repeats the charge of Jewish guilt and responsibility in the murder of Christ in about 40 different passages. So there can be no mistaking the fact that the Scriptures do condemn Jewry and the seed line of Cain for the murder of this just and innocent man, as Pilate would observe. And the interesting portions of Scripture that I'd like to point to in opening is the first encounter when we see the Roman involvement in this plan is in fact a very limited one. The Romans became the executioners for those who sought to murder him. Pilate confirmed that the energy and animus toward Jesus is coming entirely from Jewish leaders and the Jews themselves. Pilate knew that because of envy they had delivered him up in Matthew chapter 27, verse 18, and in Mark 15, verse 10. The chief priests and scribes were seeking how they might put him to death. That's in Matthew 26 and Mark 14 as well, in Luke 22, and were seeking to destroy him. As a result, Pilate himself, a manipulator, asks them, "What are you willing to give to me to deliver him up to you?" And the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes to ask for Barabbas and put Jesus to death, you see? And they shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" No mistaking that word. No, they didn't say, "Embrace him, save him, we love him." No, they didn't say that at all. Which, of course, brings us to the fact that Pilate agreed to the demand of the leaders, of the Jews, and the people that Christ be murdered. And then these Jews admitted their responsibility exclusively at that portion in Scripture, when they said, "His blood be upon us and upon our children," in Matthew 27:25. Now, Christ himself, of course, confirmed that the sin of the leaders of this community and those who were in the seed line of Cain was greater than anything Pilate had done to Jesus. Pilate was the executioner, but he did it because he was told to do it. Now, just like today. Today, the politicians in America will do as they're told. They will do whatever it is that AIPAC can get away with, convincing them to do. And if not AIPAC, the ADL. And if not the ADL, the Southern Poverty Law Center. And if not them, a whole host of other organizations can beseech them and remind them of who's boss. So that when Obama's having this struggle, this so-called battle with Congress right now over the second day of these shutdowns, allegedly, of government spending. He would take more time out, to sit down with Bibi, the killer, Netanyahu, and listen to what Bibi has to say. Because after all, he has to go to Bibi for his marching orders now, doesn't he? And Bibi gets his marching orders from the Adelsons and the Lansky's crime families, we know. And we know the others that are involved in this family of criminals, the Jewish mafia. So he he finds out from Bibi Netanyahu who's in control. And while everyone seems to be talking peace, Bibi is playing the spoiler right now. He is playing that fiddle, crucify him, with regard to the people of Iran. And you probably heard some of what Bibi had to say. Now, how does Bibi get away with this? Well, here's a little quote, maybe a little excerpt from a video in which he was asked that by, I think it was Bill Maher, going back some time ago, and it goes like this.
Unlike America, Israel seems to be able to fight wars very quickly. What is your secret? Because we don't seem to have the hang of that.
The secret is that we have America.
Yeah.
And America, you see, the point is that Israel...
Shut up! What are the...
Well, he was stumbling a little bit there, but we know what he was saying. We have America by the you-know-what. We own America, we control America, we rule America. And Ariel Sharon said that, didn't he? When he was caught supposedly off guard in the radio Your Israel broadcast in the early 2000s as saying, we control America and the American people know it. So, Ariel Sharon wasn't wrong when he said that. And Bibi Netanyahu is saying the same thing. Now, I say this because while many people are claiming and are, in fact, suffering a temporary loss of income from federally supported programs, including some veterans and others and so forth, guess what? Not $1 is taken from the foreign aid budget. Not $1 is affected. It's a done deal. It's already given. And Israel is at the top of that list. So no wonder he can laugh. And he can thumb his noses and say, we've got America, and they do our work for us, just like Pilate would do their work in murdering Jesus 2,000 years ago. You know, there's nothing new under the sun, folks. Nothing has changed. The same cast, the same villains, same strategy, same old story. It's just the time. That's all that's changed. Not much else. So, we look at these demands that are being made into the arguing back and forth between the Repubs and the Dems, and it's kind of a show. We know that. It's a circus. We talked about it last night with Art. And you know the funniest thing in the world? The funniest thing in the world that, as I said, nothing in the CIA, the FBI's budget, or any of these other agencies directly tied in to Israel is affected. Only the goy and the little goy. So, who is this Congress voting for and working for? You haven't heard the Republicans say a word about it, have you? Though the Republicans are saying they're the champions of the people. They're against this terrible Obama wasteful and spending administration. Oh, no, they're not. My friends, both parties are one when it comes to who is in control. That point must be understood by everybody within the range of my listening voice, of my voice right now, listening across the internet, and across satellite, and those who listen on the archives. It's all a ruse. I'll give you some more when we come back, and much more to talk about. Rick Adams uncensored.
Get back at him with Rick Adams, the Radio Avenger, on the Republic Broadcasting Network.
Oh, yeah. All right.
You ain't got no idea the trouble you're going to get me into.
Well, we know there's trouble, there's big trouble here, folks. This is an unavoidable fact of life. These little children in Congress are playing a game. They're playing an act, a performance, just as we saw at Sandy Hook and the Boston Marathon and all of these other performances before the American public. And the American public, not knowing any better, is believing this is a real struggle. And they're casting their villains, the Democrats or the Republicans. Well, the real villains have been unmentioned so far. Ain't that right? You know it's right. They had this meeting with House Minority Leader Pelosi and the minority leader in the Senate, McConnell, and Joe Biden, and the Treasury Secretary, Jack Lew. And Lew was slated to brief the lawmakers about the consequences of possibly defaulting on the national debt later this month. Yeah, they'll never have the guts to do that. They'll never be able to set the record straight, to totally debunk and decry the national debt and set a monetary system and a economic system that's based on solid money, on hard money, and on assets, and not this liquidity. Well, we know that. So they're going through these motions. Pelosi said the Republicans should not support this measure to raise the debt ceiling and avoid a default as a bargaining tool. And she's bickering with McConnell, and she's bickering with this Boehner, and he's bickering with her. They're going back and forth, playing this game that they play every so many months and years. And they've done it in, about 17 times now? I remember when Reagan was president. I remember how he came in. And I remember how a congresswoman came in based on that whole campaign that we're going to have a balanced budget when I'm in Congress during these Reagan years. And, of course, no such thing ever happened. In fact, deficits grew at an even more rapid rate. And we had all the big shots in the Reagan administration and the secretaries of the Treasury. And we had all of the banksters running the show, and Ron Ziegler, his press secretary, just to clear the air on these things, naturally, which we know the Annenbergs, of course, appointed the Nixon administration, most important posts, CFR members. So it was all a ruse. And now it's the same ruse, only now we're getting to the end of the road here, you see. Now we're getting to the end of the road. And Mr. Obama makes his little speech about bending over backward during his presidency to work with the Republicans and to avoid any kind of deadlock. You know what? If they were to do that and draw swords, I'd be the first one to provide each member with a sword and say, why don't you duel it out? Why don't you just go and duel it out and do us a big favor? A big favor. Because they ain't going to avoid. They ain't going to avoid the bitter medicine laid out before them of raising the debt ceiling and borrowing more until it finally collapses. You know that, and I know that. That's the name of the game. They're claiming 91% of the IRS has been furloughed. The Israeli Revenue Service. Well, let's see. Now, for all the drama surrounding this second day of this political drama of this alleged defunding of the government, this shutdown of functions of the government, very interesting to see that in reality, more or less, that as far as unpaid leave of absence and furloughs are concerned, with all accrued owed payments promptly being remitted once the government is unhalted, which of course will come, there's some 815,932 civilian government workers out of a total of 2 million. In other words, about a 41% furlough rate. And even the Wall Street Journal noted that some of these agencies, including the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are seeking all but a handful of their employees to go home without pay. Others, such as the FBI, however, the Homeland Security Department, kept the vast majority of their workers on the job. We wouldn't want those Muslim terrorists to sabotage us now, would we? They might pull a financial cyber attack on America and destroy our honest money system. Oh, my gosh. So the FBI, Homeland Security, CIA, NSA, all of these are well taken care of, believe me. Ain't no cuts as far as I can see. No real layoffs or furloughs. And all of this, of course, is going to be reversed. But it's all about scaring the public and testing the waters of how much the public will put up with, because when the time comes, when there is a collapse and there is a cutting off of all of these bennies, as they call them, then they'll be much better prepared to handle all of this, won't they? Well, you see, the Federal Reserve doesn't operate under that appropriations process, does it? No, they're unaffected. The Federal Reserve is not a government agency, my friends, despite the fact that many claim it is and claim that it is a part of the federal government. Well, it's not a part of the federal government any more than the Federal Express is, or any other private corporation, Domino's Pizza, or whatever. So clearly, again, this is a total disinformation effort on the part of the government and the media to make us think in terms of a elimination, a starvation, if you will, of federal bureaucrats and people involved some way or another, dependent upon federal support, the WIC program and others, and so on. Reality is, these programs themselves are not cut. Federal government is not cutting one iota of that budget. In fact, it's growing by leaps and bounds. And this is why when Ron Paul made his proposal that there be severe, quote-unquote, deep, meaningful cuts in spending, and he was talking across that board from the Pentagon to domestic programs, he actually came up with a program, with a budget that made sense. So the first thing that survives, of course, is this police state apparatus in America. Any temporary cutting, any temporary furloughing of people, the Pentagon, and foreign aid, right at the top of the list. Doesn't that tell us something? Doesn't that tell us really what it's all about? Sure it does. It tells us, again, that it is the bankster gangsters who run this show. Right now, there is no turning back. There is no turning back. As far as a default is concerned on the national debt, never happened. A repudiation of the debt, which should happen, but won't. How do you get back to an honest money system, by the way? How do you implement it? We talked about that. There are different ways of doing that. But one of the key ways has been the introduction of real money into the economy privately. And immediately the federal government comes down like the hammers of hell. Only we can engage in this activity of counterfeiting. With the Fed. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
I'm telling you, folks, Washington, D.C., forget it.
Haven't you got any respect for this man? I just lost it.
Yeah, I think we all have lost it. Pardon me while I cough. I think there's no respect earned in D.C., the District of Criminals, and that goes without saying. Now, you see, the banking interests that I'm just speaking about clearly are having a field day because they've done it all before. They've done it before in the rest of the world where they've had a foothold, and they've done it here to America. This is the same group, the same synagogue of Satan that was now pulling the strings with Pilate. Don't forget, they were in a position to tell Pilate what to do with this Jesus, this troublemaker, who, by the way, overturned the tables in the temple, the money changers. You see? They were operating the temple then. They were operating the cash register. And Jesus knew them, and knew them by their fruits. Now, in the end times, he talks about, and the prophets spoke clearly about, this seed line of Cain and the mark of Cain. It's Mark, the seed line of Cain, in worshiping the image of this beast. The image of this beast, which is Cain's seed line. The money system to come, the universal monetary system, will be an image of this beast system. And no man, it says, no man who's in this system can buy or sell or do any trading. See, that's what it's all about, ultimately, is control. Because on the same day, yesterday, that this whole hoax began, a day or so ago, of these sequester cuts, these budget cuts, allegedly, is the same day that the Affordable Health Care Act, as it's called, was taking in its first major phase in this year. Next year, of course, the penalties, and taxes and fines and whatever, imprisonment go into effect for those who will not submit to the mark of the beast, this beast system of so-called health care coverage. As we've said so many times, it's not about health care. It's not at all about health care, because if it were, we'd be doing things right. We'd be getting into naturopathic health care. We would be obviously doing the very things that many of you hear on these programs to make you feel well and get well. And they would be covered. But you see, there's no profit in them. Ultimately, there is no profit. For Big Pharma, there is a huge profit. For the bureaucrats, yes, they perpetuate the system. And as far as the public is concerned, they don't even know what's in that bill and how it will be another step toward total control over their lives through health care. You see, what it's all leading up to is a elimination of third-party payments and the imposition of a single-payer system, which means it will be totally government-controlled. That's the final step. Because all of this will fail. It will have to fail. It is going to not cut costs, but increase the cost, decrease whatever quality is in the system, and cause a decision-making process called rationing of health care that has to come into play. You cannot build a house of cards upon a foundation of cards, because the cards will collapse, you see. And that is why what is taking place in Congress today and yesterday and tomorrow, in this tug of war, what is going on in the, quote, financial markets, and what is happening with this new monstrosity of Obamacare, as it's called, all tie into this plan for world control over you and me and everybody. Everyone. You see, there's no escaping it. They want your soul. This is what they do best. Take your soul. And they do it by taking your body and your mind. That's why now there's so much talk about psychiatric care and these alleged attacks, these Al-Qaeda attacks, these Kenyan Mall attacks. Because here in America as well, with these naval base attacks, they're talking about terrorists, and they're talking about the need to rein in these people, as they are called. Mentally disturbed people who want to buy these assault weapons. Not the military, not the feds, and certainly not the Israelis, who are so well-intentioned and so kind, as Bibi reminded his audience at the UN. Iran wants and seeks the extermination and elimination of poor little tiny, innocent, and besieged Israel. And of course, we know that it's the other way around, that Israel has in fact threatened Iran with war, drawn a red line, pointed a gun, if you will, at the Iranian people and said, look, you either submit and disarm, which of course they have no nukes, or at least they've made it very clear that it violates their whole concept of Islamic law, the idea of mass annihilation. Or we have our ways, Bibi says. We have our ways of doing business. And when Andrea Mitchell sat down with him, one Jew talking to another Jew, it was so interesting to see how she asked no questions about Israel's arsenal of weaponry, and why Israel's weapons of mass destruction are no threat to anyone, supposedly, but Iran's are. I didn't expect Andrea Mitchell to ask that question. I'm sure you didn't either. Because even if she had the, shall we say the matzah to ask such a question, she knows the outcome and what would happen. But this is why when these people, politicians, leaders, have their press conferences and have their podium, they're very careful about screening out people who might embarrass them. Now, John McCain, as evil as he is, at least has held a few of these public meetings. And he has faced some of the music. He hasn't faced the final end of that music, but he has faced some of his critics head on. Many others are frightened to death to do it. So we have to give credit where credit is due, if I might say that. And I'm saying that quite narrowly, of course. But you see, these criminals have to have the media under their control in order to get away with these outrageous charges, these outrageous statements, these war plans, these conquests. Now remember, as we've said, in the end times, war will not be the enemy of the peoples. It will not be the beast system. It will be the cry of peace and safety. Peace and safety. A false peace, a false safety. And that is very difficult to fight against. And that's why we're here now on the air to tell you that when that period comes, we will be very unpopular. People who are telling you there's no real peace in the world. Satan is there, but he's Jesus, you will say. No, he's not the real Jesus. He's Satan, and he's come to bring peace and safety. That's the false Christ, the false Messiah. And only after the financial collapse of the money systems of the world and America's taken down, only then can you implement a system. Total disarmament, that's the goal, and the complete convergence of all the world's economies. That's their goal, convergence. I told you in 1953, there was a committee in Congress, the Reese Committee, Subcommittee on Tax-Exempt Foundations, studying what these foundations were doing to America. Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller foundations and so forth. And one of the men who represented the Ford Foundation, yes, Henry Ford's, unfortunately, his legacy and his progeny that sold out, created this foundation of tax-exempt status. And one of them got up before the committee and said, before that actual subcommittee of the Reese Committee, that we are working for the bringing down of America's standard of living and the bringing up of the other nations of the world, the time communist and non-communist third world nations, in order that we may be merged into a one world system. And some jaws dropped. And they said, would you repeat that before the full committee and the full Congress? And he said, no, I will not. But it was entered into the congressional record. And there you have it. That's the game plan, my friends. All right, we'll take a break, and we may entertain a call or two at 800-313-9443.
Don't feel like the Lone Ranger. You've got the Radio Avenger on your side.
Hey, Rick Adams is on. Hey, turn your horse radio on. Rick Adams is on. Ouch.
Don't worry. They're going to help us now. Those kind little bankster gangsters are going to help us.
When I need your help, I'll ask for it.
Well, that's what I tell them. We don't want any more help. We don't want any more salvation. We don't want any more rescue, any more debt raising, any more of this inflatable balloon that's about to burst whenever they wish to burst it. We're done. We're through. We want out of that system. This is a system that was created out of Talmudic control, going back really even before the Talmud was consummated, going back to the days before the empires of Rome, when the seed line was roaming about through all of these regions of the world. And because, remember, they admitted, they said, we have been in bondage to no man or government or country. We be free, they told Jesus when he brought it up in John 8:32. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But they said, we are free. We have always been free. We are the roamers of the earth. Now, only Cade's seed line could make that boast. The true Israelites were never free. They were never totally free. They were always doing something wrong, always in bondage, always committing sins, violating their commandments. And what happened in the end? Well, they had to pay the price. But you see, they were always taken out of bondage when they turned around and came back to Him. Now, the greatest captivity is here in America today, in this land of Israel, of true Israel in the flesh. We're seeing the greatest captivity that this nation, or the world for that matter, has ever known, in my view. So, here we are again. Who's in control? Who's roaming the earth free? By these Kenites, naturally. And they are in control of the banking system. They are in control of the economy. They are in control of the media, most definitely, and the corporate world, the governments of the world, the academic world. That's why competition is a no-no in academic circles, in medical circles, and any kind of threat to the system. Education particularly. Homeschooling is a no-no. Keeping them out of the hands, the children, and their minds out of the hands of Satan is a major battle. That's why they want that control of the mind, that Babylonian captivity. That's what it's all about. Anyhow, let me open up a phone line here or two and take a couple of calls at 800-313-9443. See what you think. Johnny in New York. Hello, Johnny on the spot. Are you there?
Johnny on the spot. Johnny live from New York. How are you, Brother Rick?
Okay, thank you, sir. Good to hear your voice again.
Listen, the question Americans should be asking is not whether to raise the debt ceiling, but rather why the federal government, which is authored by the Constitution, to create and issue interest-free money, instead it borrows that money at interest from a private, centrally owned bank. thereby plunging future generations of Americans into debt slavery to that bank. That's the real question the American people should be asking.
Now, have you heard that question in any of the news reports, so-called news media?
I haven't heard it from the prostitutes, Ricky, no.
Have you heard it from anybody they've interviewed on the street?
Absolutely not.
Because they're falling right into the trap, right into the matrix. It's he said, she said, he's to blame, she's to blame, they're to blame, they're all bad. Nobody dares to talk about the masters above, the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
it's the money demons. You know, Frank Blum had written that great book called The Wizard of Oz, and they're plunging us all into debt slavery. You know,
well, that's where we are now. Yeah.
The real question is, are we going to stand and fight and finish the course with faith, as the great Apostle Paul said?
That's the only way. It's the only sword of truth.
And I know, brother, you will, and I will, and many others, because we have to stand on that. Because at this
That's
time,
all you're going to have, because, you know, it's a time of want, a time of deprivation. And look, if Elijah could do it in caves, why can't we do it?
That's right, you know. So all I can say, you know, the Chinese, they paint the brushstroke of danger and opportunity are the same things. And all I can tell the listeners out there, in this time, in this dangerous, perilous time that we're living in, there is a great opportunity as well.
That's true.
But, you know, I could see, you know, this being fulfilled, because just as, you know, but I don't have a lot of faith in the major amount of American people, but, you know, the revolution was fought by the minority. And all I can say is that, you know, these kings and the rulers of the earth have taken counsel against the Lord and his anointed one.
Yes, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? It comes right out of the word.
Yeah, that's Psalm 2, brother. But, you know, the Lord laughs with derision at them.
Yes.
And that's what we should do. You know, we should be laughing at these fools, because we are the victors, Ricky. We are the head and we are not the tail.
Heads are going to roll, aren't they?
And for your show and for your health and for everything that you do, Rick, because I know you are a real man of God, and you have put your head out there by hosting this program. And I guess I have, too, because I've hosted programs and I've called in many a times. So listen, I'm not concerned about, you know, this world, Ricky. I'm looking for eternity. But I want to leave something to my posterity. And
the world that's coming that's more important than this age that we live in, though.
That's right, my brother. So let's be of good cheer. Let's fight a good fight.
This is only temporary. Remember that, right, Johnny? Okay, thank you, Johnny, on the spot. Thanks for your commentary. Bill in Idaho. I'm sorry, Bill in Indiana first, and then Bill in Idaho. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Rick. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing better.
Good. Well, me too, but...
I just had a sinus condition, and, you know, I ran out of oil of oregano. And
that's good stuff. Yeah, I can kind of tell. You sound a little nasally today. Rick, after listening to Tom Goodrich with you, I got his book.
You did?
Hellstorm, yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
And boy, oh boy, I'm on chapter 2 now only, but still... you know, it's like sit back here and put this piece in the puzzle as the piece is forming, and I consider it a tally board, Rick. And this tally board of the Jews spins faster than a national debt, and it makes me appreciate even more fuller what Christ said about them, that they were responsible for all righteous deaths, from Abel to Zacharias, from A to Z, you know, back then, and there's nothing new under the sun. They're just as responsible now. When I consider what the Edomite Jews did to Christ, what under Nero they did to the first century Christians, what the Bolshevik Jews did to the Russians, what the Bolshevik Jews did to the Germans, what the Bolshevik Jews did to Eastern Europe after they conquered Germany, what the Zionist Jews are doing to the Muslims in Arabia, what the Jews have done destroying America, our economy, our culture, our demographics, our reputation. The only thing left for them to destroy is our people, like they did to the Russians and the Germans and Eastern Europe and the Muslims.
Well, they want to finish that job, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. Very little resistance except for the elect and the minority and the the end times remnant, I guess you could say, the remnant.
That's it. And I tell you what, Rick, listening to any of the other shows and listening to these people who prattle on about the problems facing America and the world, you know what? If you guys don't specifically identify the Edomite Jews. You're dispensing baby's milk, warm, curdled.
You got to go
milk,
for the head of the beast. The head of the beast.
That's it.
You don't go for the head of the octopus. What good are you doing? You could chop off one tentacle and another one comes at you.
Yep,
and that's why it's the brain that does the thinking and the brain that must be eliminated. You see?
It's either cowardice on their part or they're part of the game. They're keeping us divided and conquered.
Amen. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Rick.
Bill.
Okay, goodbye,
all right,
brother.
Bill in Idaho. Come on up. Bill, are you there?
Excellent broadcast, Rick.
Yes.
Bless you. We're praying.
Thank you.
We would mention, if they are not involved, awake and aware by now, considering I advised my public servant, Mr. Risch, in regard to this shutdown, it is obvious that we need to be praying for all of them, considering that very Park Service that they would be shutting down and the Park Service rangers that are getting all the ammunition to shoot up the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one more indication of why we don't need them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. Good point. Yep, I agree. And you're seeing that come to pass now. How much we don't need in this government, that's for sure. All right, thank you, Bill. Good to hear from you again. And thank you for all you do and what you're going through there. We'll have more news and more to talk about in the last 2 days of this week, folks. Rick Adams, thank you all, and good night.